Ooh, so love, it does change everything. You know, it's so interesting that it's my anniversary. And the first time I had to come up here and speak, it was actually on a Sunday in December when Sean's plane got waylaid somewhere, and it was kind of last minute. And it happened to be on the week that we were talking about love on the Advent candles, remember the Advent, and I had to talk about love. And now here it is on my 6th wedding anniversary, and I get to talk about love. And it's changed me. Love keeps changing me, and what I'm learning about love keeps changing me. And I don't think there are any accidents. I think it's so interesting that I keep having to talk about it, because every time I have to talk about it, I learn more about love. And it's really pretty amazing. So let's get to the basic premise at Unity is, that we were born whole, holy, and perfect in origin. There are other spiritual philosophies that think we're born with original sin, and that's not the case here at Unity. Here we were born whole, holy, and perfect in origin. So sometimes people say, well, what do you go to church for then, And the reason we come to church is because we're dreaming a dream of separateness. We're dreaming a dream of being separate from one another, and we're dreaming a dream of being separate from God. So we come here to Unity to be awakened to the oneness that we are, and to be awakened to the goodness that we are naturally, and the perfectness that we are already. And the 12 powers of Christ consciousness are a core Unity teaching. And it's a fundamental process as we learn and we evoke and we work with these faculties and these disciples within us, or the disciplines within us, to become closer to the truth and closer to our oneness. Charles Filmer was the co-founder of Unity, and he studied Jesus. He studied Jesus's life, and he saw how once Jesus got to a certain level or development of spirituality, that he then called in his disciples. And it's interesting because metaphysically interpreted, what that means is, so what Jesus did in the physical, we're now doing in the spiritual by calling in these faculties that we already innately have. The 12 powers are spiritual faculties implanted in our being by God. Another way of saying it is they are the inner disciples of our Christ nature. The 12 powers are the inner disciples of our Christ nature. That part of us that isn't a man, isn't something outside of us. It's that nature within us that knows God, that knows love, that knows oneness. In Romans 12:2, be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of our minds. So using Jesus as the example, using in the physical world that he actually called forth 12 people, 12 men, right? That's the physical. So metaphysically, we're transforming it to transform our minds. And that's what Romans 12:2 is talking about. This is a journey. We're touching on those aspects of consciousness to awaken them spiritually and to know God and to know that we're all one. So we began in July. We began with faith. Faith is the foundation, right? And in faith, we aren't looking to have more faith. We all have as much faith as we're going to have, but we have to become aware of what we have our faith in. Do we have our faith in the physical, in our checkbook, in our houses, in what we do, in our body? Or do we have faith in that which is not seen? Do we have faith in the assurance and hope for that which is not seen, but we know is ours already? Do we have faith in the oneness? Do we have faith in our everlasting life? That's the spiritual faculty of faith within us that we have to develop. And then in August, we went on to strength. And strength isn't how much we can push or how much we can pull or how much we can endure. Strength is steadfastness. How steadfast are we in our faith or any of these other powers? How much do we call upon them? Where do we call upon it from? And do we hang on to that spiritual aspect of it, or do we rely back on our will or our ego? So we get to develop these faculties within us. Then in September, we went on to wisdom and discernment. And yes, we all have wisdom from getting older, and we learn things as we grow, and we just become wise to earthly ways. But also, the faculty of wisdom is that inner voice, listening to the still small voice within us that knows only good. And do we take time to listen to that still small voice? Because it's important, especially with love. So today's talk is called The Power of Love. We can't talk enough about it because we can't. It's who we are, it's what we are. And we have to keep remembering that because we forget pretty easily. And it's important. So the disciple is John, and the color is pink, as I said earlier, and it's located behind the heart. But wisdom and love work very closely together. The disciple for wisdom was James, who is John's brother. And this location is the solar plexus, which is very close to behind the heart. So they have to work together. And Charles Fillmore, he also brings in the fact that not only is there sexuality between men and women and plants and ideas. Here, I'm going to read it right from the book. This is from a 12-power meditation exercise by Charles Roth. One of the reasons we get into much of the trouble that keeps us tense, worried, and crawling the walls is that we ignorantly divorce or separate love from wisdom. The two must go together in order to give the balance necessary for harmonious and wholesome expression. Divorce is a good descriptive word to clarify this area, for Charles Fillmore states that ideas have sex, meaning gender. He writes, the evidence that sex exists in the vegetable and animal worlds is so clear that it is never questioned. But we have not so clearly discerned that ideas are also male and female. Love as a universal idea is feminine. Wisdom as a universal idea is masculine. They need to be together. They belong together. When love is divorced from or not united with wisdom, it gets into all kinds of trouble. It can become lust. It can become fanatical. It can become dictatorship. It can become like a patsy. You know, if you think about Hitler, he had a love for a country, so he was willing to kill people for it. There was no wisdom behind that. It was fanatical. So it can become very dependent on things that aren't okay. So that's why you have to marry love with wisdom. So what is love? It's similar to the question that I asked last week, what is God? It's not an easy answer. But in Paul, in the Corinthians 13:13, he says, so faith, hope, and love abide. But the greatest of these is love. Jesus said, love is the most essential quality of man. Ed Rabel, who is a unity scholar, he says, mankind says it's the most desirable, but we have the most trouble with it. People say they can't live with love and they can't live without love. Why do you think that is? One of the reasons is because the emotion love, as Christina was singing, comes with other emotions. Love comes with fear. My own experience is, one of the fears I have because of my life experiences, I have a fear of losing Gabe. So that overrides my love. It can take over that. So I have to remember, I have to let go of the object I love and remember the love that comes from within, that spiritual love, because nothing can take that away from me. Even if Gabe transitions, I'm always going to have that love for Gabe. There's going to be sorrow, there's going to be suffering, but I will always have that love, and I will always have the love of God that's going to allow me to move on. So I also love chocolate. I love to dance. I love truth. I'm a truth seeker for many years. I love a movie. I love a song. But these are all different intents of love. That we're not talking about the spiritual faculty of love when we talk about that. That's strictly the emotional part. Emotions about love can make us happy or unhappy, but love itself is perfect. Emotional love can make us fearful, but love itself casts out all fear. Back to the question, what is love? As like all the other powers, the power of love is a spiritual faculty. It is not an emotion, or I should say it's not just an emotion. That's a part of it. It is implanted in us. It is implanted in our being by God. It is the ability to know our oneness with others and the desire to know only good. Love is the foundation of our being. It's in the depth of us. So now let's talk about the three aspects of love. So we first just talked a little bit about the emotion, which is the feeling for something or the affection or the desire. We cannot love and fear at the same time. When we are in love, we don't have to fake it. We allow the flow to come. There was one day, actually the day that Gabe and I first moved in together, and I remember I was driving from our new place to our old place to get another carload of stuff. And I was so much in love, I felt like I was on drugs because everything, the colors were brighter, the music I was listening to was so pristine. There was no other explanation for me other than the joy and the love that I felt in my heart because I was moving in with the love of my life. And those moments are fleeting. They come and go. I wish I could stay in that place all the time, but I can't, not yet. So we also may feel fear. And when we do, we must stop thinking about the object, like I said earlier, the object of our love, and begin thinking about the source of our love within. And that's what's going to heal us. So the second aspect is attraction, the ability to attract ourselves to something. Love is magnetic. It flows and it knows no boundaries. Love is the binding force that allows the expression of our oneness. Mary Rowland, who was the head of Silent Unity for many years, she said, when your heart is filled with love, you will not be critical or irritable, but you will be divinely irresistible. Wow, right? So if we're divinely irresistible, what do you think we're going to be attracting to ourselves? Pardon me? More of it. More things that we love, more things that love us. So when we come from that place, when our heart is filled with love, you will not be critical or irritable, but you will be divinely irresistible. That's the attraction power of love. So the third aspect is harmony, the ability to unify or bring agreement and accord to our thoughts or to a situation. Our desire for only good to come to all, to know and feel the oneness to all. We're at a higher vibration, and that's going to create that higher feeling and continue that. And it's also the harmony between male and female, right? Between our thoughts and our wisdom, between our spouses, between the things that come into our lives that are both masculine and feminine. So this is perfect divine love, the single most beautiful thing that we can have, and it's eternal. Divine love sees no differences. God loves the sinner and the saint. God doesn't even see it as a sinner and saint. All God sees is love. God is love. God cannot not love because God is love. In Matthew 22, love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, your mind, and your strength. Because when we can do that, we'll be able to see love in God in everything and everyone. Even those places where it's difficult, where we see things we don't like, or cruelty, or evil. It's courage. The truth student has to have a lot of courage to be able to see good and love in people that are doing what we see as evil. Because one of the things from last week that I learned in doing the 5 principles was everybody does things because they think they're making a situation better. They're coming from that place of thinking that they're making it better, even though from our perspective, it's not. So we have to hold them in that place of knowing they're doing the best that they can. That's how I interpreted it for myself, to be able to see them in love. So to love the person consumed by hate or evil, otherwise we're doing the same as the evildoer if we start judging them and condemning them, right? So remember, anyone who has to attack another, they do not know who they really are. They've forgotten. So all we can do is hold that space for them. And we don't condone their actions, but we hold the truth of who they are. Remember what I had said last week about if every child, every person who, grew up to be a burglar or a murderer, if somebody looked at them more than once and said, "You are the light of God. I love you." I don't know that they could continue to do something like that, but that's not the case for many people, right? But if we could hold that vision for them, what a healing would happen, right? So I talked about other feelings and emotions that come with the emotional love, and how it makes loving difficult for humans, but it also makes it very joyous and glorious. I talked about the power of love and its aspects it's not just emotion, but it's also attraction and harmony. And the power of love within self is exemplified by courage. Because we have to be courage to be this truth student, to see love in all things, and to see the oneness in all things. We also have to be courageous to show up as the child or expression of God and be authentic. I don't know how many of us were taught to do that, but hopefully to come here and to learn that and say, okay, I'm gonna be authentic. I'm gonna peel back the layers so that I can show up and shine my light and be as authentic as I came here to be. When I was doing research for this talk, this video kept popping up. I'm like, what is this video? Like 3 or 4 times. And finally I said, okay, I guess I'm supposed to watch this video. And I'm watching it, and it's about a celebrity. And it was interesting, and I couldn't stop watching it, although it wasn't resonating with what is going on until the last 10 minutes of the video. And what this woman said was, we are vessels that need to be full. And when we came here to be filled with spirit. And what happens is when we're filled with spirit, we feel that oneness. We feel alive. We feel connected. But what happened for her, she had an addiction and she used food to fill that. And it took her many years in 12-step program, or I don't know how many years, but it took her 12-step program to help her realize that that's what she was using her food for. It was emotionally. And people do that all the time. We do that all the time. You know, instead of filling ourselves with spirit, we find other things to fill ourselves with. So the interviewer went on to ask her about the part of her life that happened just before she came to this aha moment. And she was with a man who she loved very much. And she could have stayed with that man. She said he was wonderful and he was handsome and he had a lot to offer and she would never have to work again. But she had a voice on her shoulder that said, if you do that, if you stay, you will die without ever becoming who you can be. You will not really be authentic. And so this last part of her life, she's now 80 years old, and that's what her mission is, to be here and be authentic. And that's what it is to be a truth student, to show up and to be authentic. And the courage that it takes to do that is that love, is that spiritual love within each and every one of us that says, I'm a child of God, I can do this. I love myself enough to do this. So last week I mentioned a line in a poem that came to me years ago, and it describes that part of us that knows the truth of who we are. And today I'm going to read the whole poem, and I hope I'm not going to cry. The poem is called Divinity, and it's by Anita and Brent Law, so get comfortable. It comes in waves of unstoppable inspirations. Rising, rising, it lives in unrest. Hear me, it struggles to be seen, not yet knowing the mystery that exists inside this adventure. You awaken, troubled by divine discontent. It will not sleep, nor wait to be invited. Barging in, it does not ask for your permission. The agreement was made long before you came, yet the body forgets, the mind rejects. It cannot be, it cannot be. Who am I, you ask? Just small and afraid, this cannot be mine to own. Who are you? The world calls out to demand proof of a worthy calling. An agreement previously made before you understood how afraid you would be when you stood at the edges of what humans believe is possible. A worthy argument falls on deaf ears. Unheard and dismissed, it will not entertain denial. It fights to be released by the womb of your imagination. The pain becomes unbearable. So much so, you do not have a choice, and you surrender. You surrender to love in spite of fear. You sit unwrapped and vulnerable. It is as it must be. Stepping out of the illusion that you are alone, greeted by open arms. Celebrate this victory of revealing the truth of who you are. Magnificent, magnificent, you hear them exclaim. Oh, the love is overwhelming as it travels to the core of your being. Everything you think you have known crumbles away until nothing is left. Dusty remnants of self-deceit are designed to protect. Once impermeable, you now open to truth, and everything else just falls away. The awakening sends you into a blissful explosion of laughter. You feel and know the truth of your divinity, your connection to all that is and ever was, and you are one with everything. Exposed and naked, you realize the sweetness of surrender, expanding into knowledge in one moment. You now know what it feels to be whole and complete. You now know, my dear, how does it feel? The emptiness disappears, fading into distant memories held before you discovered that you were in heaven all the while. Magnificent and brilliant is who I know you to be. And even if this moment passes, you will carry it with you forever. You will share it in your smile, your touch, your heart, your words, your presence. It will be impossible to forget this brilliant glimpse of your truth. Meeting your soul for the first time is not something to be forgotten. You are magnificent, brilliant in your divinity. Bewildered in the miracle, you have no other choice than to embrace this knowing. It is you whom is glorious and perfect. You are magnificent, brilliant in your divinity. You bring hope to a wounded world. You bring love to the brokenhearted. After all, you are magnificent, brilliant in your divinity. Take this step, my friend, for you are ready. You are ready to fully embrace your power. You are magnificent, brilliant in your divinity. Oh, do you know how deeply you are loved, how special you are? God smiles at the mere sound of your voice, the beating of your heart. You are magnificent, brilliant in your divinity. The angels sing and dance, elated to bear witness to the miracle of your birth. For you are the one. You are the only. You are the one. Dance, my sweet. It is time for you to play and reclaim your innocence. Share the joy of who you are. You are magnificent, brilliant in your divinity. I love you, my sweet, sweet child. You are magnificent, brilliant in your divinity. It is time to play, laugh, my sweet, dance your dance. You are the only one who can. You are magnificent, brilliant in your divinity. Remember who you are in times of lightness. Rejoice in who you are in times of darkness. Reclaim who you are in times of forgetting. Share who you are, my dear, for the world waits, because you are magnificent, brilliant in your divinity. And so it is.